Good morning, my alert, discerning, and insightful patriots. The weekend has always been a place where if you're a politician and you want to bury a story, you release it during the weekend. So, why is it not a surprise that this story came out during this weekend? Take a look at this from the New York Times. U.S. grants temporary protections to thousands of Haitians. The Biden administration on Saturday. Yeah, you see, if the Biden administration was proud of this, they wouldn't release it on a Saturday when a lot of good people are just, trying to unwind. They're not very likely, the average American is, to watch news during the weekend. Far less likely. So, this is a good time to bury that story. Anyway, the Biden administration extended special protections to Haitians living temporarily, yeah, in the United States after being displaced by a devastating 2010 earthquake. Do you see that temporary and 2010? Now, if you've been somewhere for 11 years, that's not temporary. At least they admit they're reversing efforts by the Trump administration to force them to leave the country. If you remember, President Trump did say, "You've overstayed your welcome. It's time to go." And what excuse did the Biden administration, Uncle Joe, have? Let's go on a little bit. The decision announced by the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Alejandro N. Mayorkas. You remember him. He's a retread from the Obama administration. He started out with DHS, went on to Immigration Services, and finally he became a deputy secretary. And now he's the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security under Uncle Joe. Anyway, Uncle Joe promised to restore a program that shields thousands of Haitian illegal aliens from the threat of deportation. And they say this was a restrictive policy under President Trump. Oh, were they ever wrong? Let's see what his excuse is. They actually quote Mr. Mayorkas. Haiti is currently experiencing serious security concerns, social unrest, an increase in human rights abuses, crippling poverty, and lack of basic resources, which are exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. So basically what you're trying to tell me is that Haiti is still a shithole country. Now, remember when that was attributed to President Trump? But we found out that it didn't come from President Trump. Let's take a look at what President Trump actually said. We have to go to Breitbart. Donald Trump denies shithole comment. This was not the language used. Unfortunately, I say, because President Trump, although he will mock people, you don't see him using four-letter words like the normal people does. He's a little bit more circumspect than you and I. Now, the fake media invented this term. In fact, I think it even tells you who made this term up. If we go down, according to the Washington Post, Trump described countries like Haiti, El Salvador, and Africa as shithole countries. Now, if you remember, the Washington Post was the one who broke this story, and they would never tell us who gave them this information. Here is what Trump actually said in his Twitter account. The language used by me at the DACA meeting was tough, but this was not the language used. What was really tough was the outlandish proposal made, a big setback for DACA. And he also tweeted, never said anything derogatory about Haitians other than Haiti is obviously a very poor and troubled country. Never said take them out, made up by Dems. I have a wonderful relationship with Haitians, probably should record future meetings. Unfortunately, no trust. Now, if you remember, it was after this meetings that President Trump started saying that he thinks he might have to start recording the meetings because there were so many lies coming out afterwards. I really do wish he would have said shithole countries. I mean, the world believes it now thanks to the fake news media. And it is very descriptive. I mean, if you're going to choose shithole countries, it's a more broken country than either Moldova or Ukraine. For the Americas, Haiti would be the go-to country to call a shithole country. In Asia, of course, it's North Korea. And in Europe, most people would choose Serbia. Although, actually, Moldova and Ukraine are poorer GDP than Serbia is, but there's something about Serbia. In every single continent, there are shithole countries. Countries that can't take care of themselves, but should be able to. And it's not like Haiti shouldn't be better off than it is. Let's take one last look about how Haiti could improve itself if only it wasn't for that wild corruption that its government has. This is from the worldatlas.com. What are the major resources of Haiti? Scrolling down. Haiti is a Caribbean nation of 10.8 million people. With this population of 10.8 million people, it only has a GDP of 19.93 billion. Now, to give you some kind of measuring stick to measure it against, where I live, in Hawaii, this state alone last year had a GDP of $75.86 billion. So, for a state that has less than a tenth of the population of that whole country, we have about 4 times the GDP. The nation mainly exports essential oils, apparel, coffee, cocoa, bitter oranges, and mangoes. The mining sector remains largely untapped. A recent finding has shown that the nation of Haiti might have some of the largest oil reserves in the world. The oil reserves are estimated that they could be larger than those of Venezuela. Daniel Mathurin, a French scientist, has compared Haiti's oil reserves to a swimming pool compared to those of Venezuela, which he likened to a glass of water. If Haiti really did have a free economy, oil companies would be shooting each other in the back in order to try to get contracts with the government of Haiti to get at these natural resources. With natural resources such as oil and natural gas. Oh, and I'm not going to scroll down, but they also have gold and copper for natural resources. The reason why none of these natural resources are exploited is that these companies are afraid that Haiti would either nationalize the companies once they started to produce a profit, or that with the inbuilt corruption that is already within the country itself, it's just too expensive to keep on bribing these officials over and over again. Haiti does have the natural resources to be one of the richest countries in the world. Haiti cannot exploit its natural beauty or its natural resources as long as its current corrupt government is around. Now, I'm not a big brain. I don't know what the fix action for Haiti is, but I do know that just because a nation is corrupt does not mean that we should open our doors to its residents. The residents of that country should fix their own damn problems. Haiti is a country that is rich in beauty and natural resources. The only thing holding Haiti back are its corrupt politicians. Now, while we are acting as an escape valve for Haiti so it doesn't blow up, we are doing nothing more than impoverishing ourselves. I really don't hold much hope for Haiti coming out of its shithole country status.